Welcome to my podcast, Shaping Your Journey. My guest in this episode is drummer Chad Wackerman, who has performed with many great artists, including Frank Zappa, Bill Watrous, Steve Vai, James Taylor, and many, many more. And remember, please like and subscribe so we may continue inspiring with this podcast. Here is Chad Wackerman. Hi, Chad. Thanks so much for taking the time. We've been chasing each other, and finally, we're able to do this. I know you're really busy, so let's get right down to the conversation. Let's get right down to the conversation of shaping your journey. So, I mean, we all have our stories where we started, where we were going, and I strongly believe we're masters of our destiny if you're hip to it, and all you have to do is show up. I mean, wherever you start, and then in that journey, what happens, the decisions we make, and where things take us, and it's always kind of our decisions. So before we get on to tell us, what was the very first thing? Where did that spark start for you?
So my father was a drummer and a music teacher. He was kind of a famous jazz educator in California. And there was always a lot of music around the house, and I got to see my dad play drums. And the first concert he took me to was Louis Bellson.
Wow.
When I was very young.
Beautiful.
So that was it. When I kind of saw Louis play, it was like, oh my goodness. So I was I was very young when you're a kid and you realize people have professions. You could be a doctor, a lawyer, or a drummer. It's like, well, why wouldn't you be a drummer?
Right.
So, no, very, very early on. And there was, like I said, my dad was a big influence, and there was, for me and my three brothers, too. We're all musicians.
Yeah. And, I mean, what a great way to start. Louis Bellson, to me, was one of those guys that was intense drummer, an incredible musician, but his sense of dynamics, I couldn't believe when I first saw him with a big band. I was at a jazz camp. I think it was a National Stage Band camps or Jamie or so. No, National Stage Band camps. When I saw him, and I couldn't believe, he could hold the band, playing soft, like piano, and building up the band and setting them up and having these dynamics. He wasn't always loud.
No, he had total control. I mean,
wow.
If you watched him with Ella Fitzgerald or Oscar Peterson trio, as well as the big band stuff, but and just a great person, just a encouraging, welcoming, and educator. He did quite a lot of drum clinics, but they're really very educational. And he wrote music. He wrote and arranged for his big band. A lot of people don't know that.
Yeah.
Even that. I recently found out from Don Lombardi that one of the famous tunes that he played with Duke Ellington, I think is Skin Tight or something. He actually wrote it. I thought Duke Ellington wrote it, but Louis wrote it. So,
beautiful. And you know what I found out also? That Louis Bellson was Italian.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
What? Like Emil Richards, Louis Bellson doesn't sound Italian, but they were interesting.
So, yeah, he was I think that was the first concert I saw. The second concert I saw was Jimi Hendrix.
Wow.
So I was 10 when I saw Jimi Hendrix. It was right before he passed, and it was Mitch Mitchell and Billy Cox. And Buddy Miles opened up with the opening band. So, and that was completely different, but it was still, I realized pretty quickly, because I listened through Dad's record collection. I listened to jazz first.
Right.
But Jimi Hendrix, he was improvising. They were playing long solos, and Mitch Mitchell, I thought, well, I'd listen to all these jazz drummers, but you could hear the direct thread which Mitch Mitchell's playing. In that period of kind of late mid-'60s and '70s, the rock drummers were still very much had a jazz feel.
Right.
This looseness, and kind of, there would be some swing in it, even though it was rock and roll.
Right.
So, and that hit me. I thought, well, it's not that different.
Yeah.
Really, what they're doing is not that. I mean, the songs are different, but and the intensity and the volume is different. But I could pretty early on see a thread, and I just had the bug then. It's just that's absolutely what I wanted to do, and my dad supported. My parents supported that with hard work, not without. It was like, well, if you're going to do this, it's really competitive, and you have to just like put everything into it. Again, Dad was a great. He taught for 66 years.
Wow.
And he had to stop during COVID because he was teaching kids big band, and because the horns blow germs towards you. Just
right,
Dad, you have to stop for a while.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was our upbringing was pretty unique because Dad was a jazz teacher, lived in a small beach town near Long Beach called Seal Beach, but Dad would bring in these great jazz artists to do fundraising for the school, like fundraising so they could take trips to the Reno Jazz Festival, which was a big deal back then. So some of the artists he would have perform at school would be Louis Bellson, Hampton Hawes, Tom Scott, Carol Kay.
Oof. Wow.
Maynard Ferguson a few times. Bill Watrous, who I ended up playing with. So we were exposed. This little beach town was exposed to, the joke was, if you were overseas and saw the calendar of guest artists they'd have each year, people would think that Seal Beach was like the nucleus of jazz in America.
Nice.
In fact, it was a really sleepy beach town. But so Dad created this environment.
Beautiful.
And he was very open with music. He thought it was good or it wasn't.
Right.
And he didn't care about style so much.
As it should be. I mean, there's 7 notes, right? And it's either good or bad, and well done or not well done.
Yeah. So anyway, we had an unusual upbringing, but I have to thank Dad for a lot of that and his encouragement. And even with teachers, Dad's favorite drummer was Louis Bellson, and we were lucky to live only an hour away from the pro drum shop in Hollywood, where in the 70s it was a real magnet for drummers, and Louis would often be there. And so Dad called the owner, Bob Yeager, and said, I want to write a letter to Louis. Do you have his address? He said, yeah, sure. And he asked if we could, if I could take lessons from Louis, and if my dad also could take lessons from Louis. And Louis, such a gentleman, he hand wrote a letter back, excuse me, and saying how busy he was. I'll get some water. How busy he was with his big band schedule he just started. But he recommended his teacher, Murray Spivak.
Oh.
And so that changed everything for us, for all my brothers and my dad.
Yeah. I mean, the importance of a great teacher. I mean, we all have at least that one person who is the key person who just nailed it for you and put you up to everything you had to do. I mean, Pierre Beluse was my mentor at McGill University, because I was a rock drummer, but I really wanted to learn percussion, classical percussion, jazz. I mean, everything I could. I got really that big thirst for it, and he was the guy. And like he was the guy, and if you he was the gatekeeper, and if you passed him, and if you were a student of his, you didn't even do an audition. Because they knew where you were coming from, and the work ethic, and just the training, unbelievable. So, yeah, important.
It is, and there's something about that old school way of tough teaching.
Yeah.
I mean, you had to deliver, or you had to put in the work, and if you didn't, you wouldn't be coming back.
Right.
No, really, when Dad did call Murray, he said, well, I have a 6-month waiting list. If you could be available in 6 months, and sure enough, in 6 months, he had a methodical system, and people graduated out of his system eventually.
Nice.
And so there'd be more openings, but it was like that. And, it was all very slow and very methodical. But because that, it eventually enabled me to play what people call difficult things very easily without stress. So
I wanted to ask you about that. When you say difficult, challenging, of course. I mean, who was it? Someone told me that you were one of the 3 people with Frank Zappa who could read the black page. apart from Bozio and
Vinny Colaiuta,
was-
of course. Yeah.
right, yourself. So, and I know, I mean, we all know how difficult that Black Page, everything that Frank Zappa did, but the Black Page in particular. So how
That's
did
the
this?
most famous one. Yeah, he did write more difficult pieces. There was one I got to perform a few times. One's on the London Symphony Orchestra recordings, called Moe and Herb's Vacation. And the first movement it's a clarinet concerto, but the first movement, the drums are in unison with the clarinet.
Wow.
And it's notated as a multiple percussion part, classical. There's no improvisation in it, and the first measure takes up the whole first line of the page. It's
beautiful.
It has such detail and such intricate dynamics, and
Beautiful. And of course, studying
and it's
with...
a beautiful piece of music. That's
Yeah.
the thing. Once you get past the intimidation of seeing it, you're listening to it and finally, oh no, these are phrases, and they sound like they speed up and slow down, but that's why he wrote those polyrhythms that way. So it could be
Right.
played with an orchestra and a conductor, but it's not rubato. All the accelerations and decelerations are mathematical, but
Right.
you can't play it like it's math.
Right.
You have to play as the clarinet phrases. The drums
Yeah.
have to phrase the same. So.
No, that's great training. I mean, I'm really happy. I did, as many others that I know who studied classical percussion. I mean, Peter Erskine studying with George Gaber, for example.
Yes.
I mean, we all went through that rigorous learning with these guys and learning repertoire from Varese to Stockhausen. I mean, that comes into your playing, absolutely. And you can hear it in people's playing, even though sometimes you don't think that they come from that place. But that
No,
training...
it's part of you. Yeah, all those experiences are part of it, which comes back to what you're talking about, your journey.
Yeah.
And I do think that I think the journey would be simple if you really had total power over it.
Okay.
You know what I mean? If you really made the decisions, I'm going to take this pathway. But often people do that. They start on a pathway like the great Jim Keltner, right?
Right.
He was a jazz drummer. He didn't like rock at all. But his path ended up, well, okay, I've got these gigs, I'll try this. But he's ended up being my favorite rock drummer. You know what I mean?
Everybody's. Yes.
So you come up with a path, but on the way, it kind of can branch off in a different direction. I think it's really, really important, especially for students, not to have tunnel vision. Not to
Right.
say I only like this kind of niche music, period, and closing off all other possibilities, because you don't know.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
like, you might play with some wonderful country band and you never played, and all of a sudden there's a whole art to that. There's a
Sure,
whole art to playing with a singer-songwriter,
Yeah.
backing up a vocalist, and they're all different. Requires different modes of
Right.
playing music.
Yeah, and you never know you might like something unless you actually show up and try it. And
Yeah.
like that's funny about Jim because all his work with Stones, all the work with like many of those guys,
All the Beatles.
the Beatles, each one of them, yeah,
Ry Cooder,
Yeah.
so many of my favorite records has that uncopyable feel that he has.
unbelievable, yeah.
You can't copy it.
Yeah, and that comes from. It's like you show up with the baggage you have, but you become really good at this other thing that you hadn't even thought of. But you need to try it and do your best with it, and all of a sudden you get known for that. Another one, I just had this thought. I remember when I first contacted Mike Clark to come to COSA, because as we. Each year I would say, okay, what would be the mix of artists that we could have there for the week so that people could have that total experience. So I said, the linear drumming that Mike Clark is
Did with Herbie Hancock and the Headhunters,
I didn't know him for anything else. Funny enough, Herbie Hancock, that's when I discovered Mike Clark. So I'm on the phone with him, and he says, Aldo, no, I can't do that. I'm a jazz drummer. I want to talk about jazz. And I'm going, yeah, but we've got Jimmy Cobb over there too, and we've got Joe Morello. But I said, brilliant. You could be the guy that everybody thinks you're only doing the linear drumming, and then you can explain and show in real time why that history of jazz brought you to this place. And then he came. And then he said, okay, that makes sense. But it's funny, he was, a jazz drummer. This thing was an accident, right? More or less. I mean, it was planned.
Well,
but
and the way he was brilliant. He is brilliant.
Yes.
But the thing about his playing in that the Headhunter band, it kept on moving. Often it wasn't a recognizable one-bar pattern like, say, a stereotypical funk drummer might do.
Right.
Play a 1 or 2 bar pattern. His thing was like it was improvising. It kept on moving, but it still grooved like crazy. And on some of the stuff is, who knows where the downbeat is? It just keeps on moving in this wonderful adventure.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I can see the jazz part of it as opposed to a pattern-based part of it. I had to learn how to play that way when I played with Allan Holdsworth, because he didn't want to hear a pattern. Typically, maybe except for maybe a couple of the songs, he wanted it to be a living thing.
Interesting.
He said, like, the whole tune needs to be a groove, but not a 2-bar repetitive anything.
Yeah.
Let's make the whole song groove. And so that's, takes a minute to think, okay, how am I going to do this?
Yeah. Did you, in your, you obviously played with all of these guys, but did you do any like formal training aside from Spivak? Like degrees, university, or this, you were so deep into it, you didn't have time for it?
I was at university for a very short time. In high school, I was lucky. A percussionist named Barry Silverman had just left the Israeli Philharmonic, and he moved to Huntington Beach, where I was going to high school. He just got a teaching job, I think, to get a job, But so he was in our orchestra, but we connected right away, even though I was in high school. And he put me in a college percussion ensemble that he was running. So we got to play I got to do some of that. I didn't, I was at university in the mid-'70s, like 70, 78, 79. And the only 2 schools in America at that point where you could play drum set and get a degree were North Texas State or Berklee College of Music.
Right.
All the other schools, you had to be classical percussionists. There was no degree. So the program was you study marimba for 2 years, then you graduate to timpani for 2 years, then you get your degree. So I had already been playing. I played violin in junior high school and high school.
Wow. Okay.
Not well, but I learned a lot. I learned a lot about music and of course, intonation and phrasing and as a drummer, duration of notes.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Yes.
Really, how a tie works to another. When you hit, if you're not rolling on a snare drum, you're just hearing the attack. Your ear isn't trained for the duration.
Right.
So I learned a lot through it. So I played marimba for a year and a half, and I just started working, and I mean now I actually teach at the University of Cal State University Long Beach, but I just have the jazz studies drummers. I teach them privately, but I don't have a degree. No, but I went from that to playing in a rhythm section that was able to do a lot of work. We were good at playing all sorts of styles authentically. We could back up singers. We could play funk. We could play rock real well. So we were Bill Watrous' rhythm section. Then we also was Leslie Uggams' rhythm section. She was a Broadway singer. Then people would hire the whole rhythm section to do albums because we were really fast at arranging. And we could play bebop. We could play, pretty good shifting around. And then from there, a friend of mine told me about a Frank Zappa audition in 1981, and that's when I joined that train, which was, obviously its own journey to bring your theme back to it.
Guys like him, that brilliance, that genius, that here's a funny story. I remember it was a friend of mine who sent me a clip of Frank Zappa on the Saturday Night Live with his project.
Yeah, once with Terry, once with Vinny.
Yes. And well, it was Lou Marini who was the sax player in the band at the time. And Lou and I are very, very good friends, right?
Yeah, we play with James Taylor together sometimes. Yeah.
Yes. And so I saw this, and it was Lou with the black hair, same mustache, same everything. And so I sent it to him. I said, Lou, is that you? So he said, who else?
Yes.
But he told me the funny story. He says, and this is really funny, and I'm so happy that Frank would push that envelope. He says, on the set, once the band, Frank Zappa got going, everything was coming off. People were trying to get him to stop, cut. It wasn't working. Frank Zappa decided he was going to go to the end of this, and the band is laughing their hearts out because they're happy this is happening. But on the other side, they want to stop the show because this is who's going to listen to this? We're going to get murdered. That was funny. Nice. When guys like that, you push the envelope publicly and to the larger audience, you're doing the larger audience a lot of good because otherwise they wouldn't get exposed to that, right?
Yeah, there's so many different ways. That's a whole topic. It could be a podcast on its own.
Yes.
How artists relate to the audience and what their concept of that is. Some people want to please the audience. I got to work with great bass player Alfonso Johnson.
Right.
And of course, he was in Weather Report.
Right.
And Joe Zawinul told him one night, he said, it's your job to challenge the audience. That's part of your job. So that's a whole nother way of thinking,
Yeah. Well, sometimes you don't have the choice, right? Sometimes you're working for somebody who says, I need to hear this thing every night.
And that's their decision. Yes, the artist, sure, and you're a side person. But if you're a leader, there's different approaches,
Yeah, and of course you have your own project, your trio and your albums.
We've been recording a new record now.
After all of these things that you are doing, and you were on a tour with James Taylor and all of those people who called. You were subbing for Gad, I remember, because Gad is usually on that gig, but he couldn't do part of the tour.
I did the summer tour I just finished, and Steve was playing with Paul Simon, so he came back and did the fall part of it again. So it's his gig, but I get to jump in when he's double booked.
Nice. No, that's beautiful. But then when you're in the front, when it's your project, and I'm speaking to you specifically, how do you feel about that? Not feel about it. Obviously, when we're working with somebody else, you have to respect what they need and what they are asking you to do. Absolutely, professionally speaking. But when you have the opportunity, do you take it to do something else and educate?
It's a great position to be in because it's your choice.
Right.
It's a one. That's where you. I am not. So we're doing a European club tour coming up. So, and people, people know my history of playing with Allan Holdsworth and Frank Zappa. I'm mostly known for that. So, that's an audience that I think wants to be a little bit challenged.
Right.
They don't want to. They don't want to hear. I don't want to bore them and be totally predictable.
Right.
And it's an opportunity for the band to stretch.
Right.
It's and the players I have they're amazing. Alex Magicek on guitar is playing this tour, and Steve Hunt from Holdsworth's band, and Jimmy Haslip on bass.
Wow.
They're all super. It's basically a super group, So they need to be featured because they have such a gift. It's the gift to the audience to feature them. So
right.
I keep, when writing music, I keep that in mind.
Yeah.
And it's something that Louis Bellson again talked about. He said Duke Ellington would write for the people in his band. Like he had a brilliant trumpet player named Cat Anderson who could play screaming higher than any trumpet player had played at that time. So it's like, oh, you can do that? Okay, I'm going to write for that. I'm going to feature you. And Zappa did that too. He, part of the audition, you would go through this whole long process of playing his charts, and then it had various stages of it. At the end of the audition, he would say, okay, what do you do that's fantastic? And that was an open question. It could be music. It could be, Bobby Martin he was an athlete too. He could walk on his hands for a half mile,
Okay.
Some guys just had these quirky things that were really unusual. And then Frank would use it in the show.
Beautiful. Yeah.
So I think it's my job what I like to do is present these amazing musicians, but don't put handcuffs on them.
Yeah. Well said. Well said.
So like really give them something special, because these people are really special. These are not, so I'm not saying play this part, just play this part. I'm writing them, there's melody and there's chords that have to be played, but then there's other parts that's going to definitely feature, and you need to think about the shape of the set, contrast, what tunes are going to go together, even key-wise. Because from a song to song could sound like a modulation, right? Especially if you glue them together a little bit. And that can be some really interesting harmonic things. So really all of it. But
yeah. No, that's nice, and I'm glad you're doing that, because I mean, ultimately, when you think, you're making me think back when I would see, back in the '60s, every group that would come out would be so different from the last.
Mm-hmm.
You have your Emerson, Lake and Palmer, never heard of them, so you're sitting in the theater, and you go, oh my God! And then you see Yes, who was the warm-up act of the warm-up act, first time in North America. Mm-hmm. And you say, what? And we come away with inspired with ideas, saying, well, if he did that, then that inspires me to be able to do this.
To be open.
So I think it's a responsibility to do that. Seeing the mothers of invention, Frank Zappa, I remember.
Yeah.
That was always something to look forward to, because you didn't know what to expect, right? So you were always.
I tell people, one of the most amazing things about working with Frank was that, as opposed to a rock gig or a pop gig where you have hits, where the band has to play these hits night after night because that's what people want to hear.
Sure.
You didn't know what he was going to play, but so I finally kind of figured out. Well, people go to see his shows to be surprised. Like the whole thing was, what's going to happen? What's he going? We don't know. And and he, every show he would deliver surprises, and often to the band too.
Yeah. And I think that's the best part. I had an experience like that.
But it was a real living thing. Like every show was. It wasn't. He hated. We called it freeze dried, like freeze dried coffee versus real coffee. Okay. You're Italian, right?
Yeah. Oh God, espresso. That's not espresso.
But he hated learning a guitar solo and playing the solo from the record on the gig. It's like, you have an opportunity. Why would you do it?
Yeah. No, and I think it's important, both as an audience and being on stage. I had, that kind of experience, as I was saying. Earlier this year, I got called by Omar Sosa, the great pianist, to do his Canadian tour. Great. And, we had one rehearsal, but without instruments, because it was like it was a complicated thing. So I got called in, go through the music a little bit, this and that. So we have an idea. I have mapped out what they're doing, but I have a lot of liberty within that, which is fantastic. Mm-hmm. Great. And then the first night, so I got it. I mapped out more or less where I'm going. So the second night, all of a sudden, one of the players invites somebody from the audience, a singer, to sing something with us, and we played. We followed, we played it, and like completely confused because I don't remember playing that last night, or at least any variation of it, or nobody told me. And you're consumed in making sure you got all the important stuff
Right.
down. And then afterwards, I asked Omar. I said, Omar, I don't understand that one tune where the lady came up, the well-known singer here, and that actually happened in Montreal at one of the theaters. I said, you didn't tell me you were doing that tune? He says, I didn't know either. It was Keita, who was a choral player, who they were friends, and she was in the audience, and he decided to do a thing, and we all followed. He says, no, I knew just as much as you did. I said, oh, okay, nice. So you're always ready for a nice surprise, and it's always fresh, even for the audience,
and I think
right?
tell students this too, because for a lot of students being in that situation, they'd be very nervous. This is something not practiced. I've even worked with professional musicians. I won't name a name, but just somebody. He's a brilliant, creative drummer, but things are worked out. And we were in a percussion band and we had one of the percussionists. I can't even mention his name because I'll give everything away. But the guy was not. The other drum set player was not comfortable with the amount of change that would happen on stage,
Yes.
And I was like, I'm looking at this brilliant drummer next to me, and I'm looking at these two percussionists who are just amazing. It's like, no, everybody's amazing. Everybody has great ears. I can trust something good is going to happen here, even though I don't know where it's going to go.
Right.
But I'm going to listen and be sensitive and try to make this thing into a shape or and because, if you have people sit in or you have a leader, we played even with James Taylor, he tends to, he has a massive catalog of tunes, right?
Right.
So, the first tour I did in 2011 with him, we played 90 songs.
You have to learn
90.
all of them?
I have a book because I write some charts for cheat sheets, or some are very sparse, some are detailed, and then I sometimes just read off of Jimmy Johnson's lead sheet. And we're playing some gig with 20,000 people, and somebody requests a tune. I've never heard it before, so I'm looking over at Jimmy, the bass player, and he's like, okay, wait, okay, come in here. Then Walt Fowler comes walking across, kind of taps me on the shoulder as I'm playing. He said, I think the bridge is in halftime. Then he walks away. But you just roll with it.
Yeah.
But you do get to a point where, you're just looking on stage. No, everybody's really, an amazing musician. We're working for a great artist. There's just a whole lot of trust. This is going to be good, or we'll make it good.
Yeah. But it's also...
You have to kind of...
Yeah, but it's very much like a conversation, right? To me, I don't see it any different
directly
than that.
like a conversation. Drumming is a conversation.
Yeah, it's a conversation. You listen, and what you say needs to be or should be in the context of what's going on, and everybody brings in
Rhythm can be taught as words. I've done that. I have a son who has a disability, and through his schooling, junior high school and high school, he was playing it. He can't read music, but he's a very good feel player. He's got a great feel, but because of his disability, he can't read music, and so they would be playing some complex big band arrangements, some Gordon Goodwin arrangements and stuff in high school, and so we just came up with word rhythms. And I realized I saw a student teacher did this once with very young kids, where she just had the kids play claves and just keep a beat, and then she said these really funny phrases like put out the cat outside, and all the kids would crack up, and she said, sing it to me, da-dun, 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 da-dun. Oh, come play it on your drums. Like a whole room of 7-year-olds,
Wow.
playing in unison. So, to teach that in the traditional mathematical way would be almost impossible.
Yeah.
One
Yeah.
E and a, two E and a, three E and a, four E and a.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I thought, okay, I can teach my son this way. Really, early in the morning. Da 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 da. Drumming. I even tell for some students, you can play a solo as it's a conversation. Think about what people do in conversation. A party, somebody comes up with a big statement, or an argument. So what do people do? Well, somebody will have a point, he'll state his point, and somebody else will give an opposite opinion. And usually the other person will just say they say the same thing louder.
Right. Yeah.
No,
yeah.
it is this. No, I'm right. It is this. Copy that on drums.
Yeah. You
Those
just
are all
made,
musical phrases. Are all statement. Now play with harmony. Now play with. You can do these little games which will get you out of the lick, kind of, or playing it the same things you play all the time as a rut.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I tell about students, I say, don't just copy drummers, copy guitar players, copy saxophone players. They all play shapes. They all play scales up and down. You can absolutely copy that on the drum set, and it'll sound very musical.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it reminds me of this project I was involved in a long time ago. It just brought me back to that. I got called to do a recording, a session for a publisher who just came out with a method of learning a new language, learning English, for example. So I would be by myself with a snare drum, and the person would say to me those words or phrase, let's go out. So I would translate that onto the drum.
Right.
And I thought that's brilliant because it's exactly what we're doing, right? So I mean, your point of these phrases and saying them. I mean, Indian classical percussion. I mean, before they touch the instrument, it's all vocalized.
Yeah,
right?
of course.
And I think it's a great enhancement. Yeah. Thanks for reminding me of it now.
Sure. And it's also an interesting way to teach kids who are not at the level where they can read, but you can teach them these syncopations pretty, very directly, very quickly.
Right. Yeah.
It's the funnier it is, the more they remember it too, But Zappa did the same thing. Often, we had all these classical interludes typically in the pieces, but the band was very good at playing the classical stuff. So sometimes we'd play a complete piece, but often he would just give us lyric sheets, and we were just noting everything down. Okay, play this this riff after this word, or that kind of thing.
Wow.
And then sometimes to punctuate, like some of his tunes would have like some kind of punchline to it, or some kind of very dramatic moment lyrically. And often he would want me to double the rhythm of what he was saying to make it even more aggressive, you can do that when you're creating, when you're playing in any kind of vocal tune, like with a rock band too, as well. The other way to make it really dramatic, of course, is stopping.
Sure.
Whole band stops, and here's the vocal, here's the punchline. Then you're back in. But you can arrange things. It's quite fun to do.
Nice.
These
little things very interesting.
Make it dramatic.
Yeah. And also, I mean, thinking outside the box, it doesn't have to be this systematic, exactly the way someone else did it.
No, the main thing is, I think, to make the music feel good, whatever that takes.
Right.
That always is king to me above everything else. Is if you can make because I know even when we play gigs with Allan Holdsworth, sometimes we play in New York at like the Iridium for 4 or 5 nights. And that place it's a touristy, people see jazz club on the outside. They come in.
Right.
And often people would not be musicians. I mean, of course, we got a lot of musicians, but for Allan, he was always more moved by somebody saying, "We've never heard anything like this before, but boy, we sure like it."
Yeah.
Because that takes away the whole musician head analysis of him being able to stretch on the third of the neck of the guitar and the scales and all that. I said, often those people aren't listening. They're watching. But this tourist who comes in, if they like it, I feel so much better about what we're doing.
Yeah, no, that's a good.
It touches
good
that
point.
person.
Yeah, very good point. Because
but I think if you can make the music feel good, whatever it is, you're inviting anybody.
Yeah. And I mean, when you do, for example, one of the things I always was not a big fan of was these contemporary music. We used to do, I've done a lot of contemporary music in the past, and what I didn't like was you go to a contemporary music concert, everybody's dressed in black. Everybody looks like they hate what they're doing.
They have the uniform.
Yeah, they hate what they're doing. And nobody smiles. Everything takes forever. And so in my percussion group, Repercussion, we said anytime we do the contemporary stuff, because that's what the tradition, we're all rock drummers and jazz guys and everything else. But this was where we started as the band. I said, let's stretch it out. Let's be the Pink Floyd, the lights, the choreographed. Let's have fun with this because we are having fun, and we can't pretend to have fun because we are having fun, or pretend we're not having fun, right? So let's break that and make it like an event. The people who are sitting out there may not understand this thing what you're doing because you've spent all these years doing this, and this may be the first time they hear it. If you present it nicely, like Allan, in your case, would do that to someone who would speak to them, no matter what it is. Zappa was perfect for that. If you can take Zappa, and he would just turn you on to things and totally turn you around, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Oh, he mashed up everything, yeah.
And it was beautiful, but it was well done and well thought out, and there was a reason why it was not just nothing, just...
Yeah, it was interesting because it was very, very practiced, very rehearsed, for long periods of time. And then, but then there was the whole, he had all these visual cues and stuff, crazy stuff with his hair, which would mean like go into reggae or go into ska or play 11 now. like, and the band, we would practice those changes in rehearsals. So literally every show was different, like you'd be playing a tune, it might be a straight ahead metal tune, and if he does this, well, it's now reggae. Like next bar, and then he would have all these other cues, but it made it again. It just made it a really living, breathing thing.
Right.
So the band was super tight, but there was all this change that would spontaneously happen on every show. And so you had to memorize all the music because you couldn't keep your eyes off of him. No, true. It was, and it was rock and roll lighting with flashing, and so there's no possible way you had to memorize everything.
Nice.
So that was part of it.
Yeah, and you're paying attention. You're alive all the time, and your antennas.
He really respected his audience. That's another thing I've noticed. Besides being a great leader, he was like, every tour has to be better because the audience expects that. That's the way he put it. Like every band we have needs to be better than the last band.
Okay. No pressure.
Lots of pressure, but when you were finally out there doing it, then it was fun.
Sure. No. Yeah. And it was a lot more worthwhile for everybody. The audiences would go away. They had a unique experience. And then as a musician...
Or they come back. They would see multiple shows because they were all different, too. So, which is smart.
Yeah, of course. Brilliant. But getting to the odd time signatures and all of that crazy stuff, which is, we're doing a lot of that these days. If you were to say to someone, another drummer or a percussionist, how do you learn that from the beginning? Either you're an advanced percussion musician now, or in the beginning, should you approach that? How should you prepare for that?
Learning any new rhythm, you need to repeat it. You need to. The first time you've learned quarter note triplets, like da 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 da, da. That doesn't come naturally to most people
Right.
if they've only heard rock music is straight up and down. So you figure out the formula and mathematically to count triplets, then every other triplet, then put it in a tempo. But then you train your brain to hear the sound of it with repetition. So odd times I approach the same way. Explain you can break any odd time signature down into a 2 pattern and a 3 pattern.
Right.
So so it's pretty easy to teach them medium tempo. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it could be 2 counts plus the 2, 4 plus the 3, 4, or the 3 in the front, 2 in the back. So then we accent with the bass drum on the 1 counts always, because that creates the main pulse, C, 4, 5. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Just 2, 1, 2, 3. Then a very typical thing in any 3 pattern is to divide that in 2. So 2, if you're in 3, 4, 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2, 3. So just modularly now, if you have 7, you could play a 2 and a 2, then 1, 2, and 3 at the end. Then really get used to the sound of the 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Most typical Western pattern, right? And 7. You play that over and over, then you start experimenting with those accents at the end of da-ka-da-da-ka-da-da, right? Easy sticking. So it's just step by step. For the faster ones, again, it's just 2s and 3s. It doesn't matter if it's 19 or 5. If you just come up with the simplest sticking, it could be right, left for a 2, accent the right, put your bass drum on the 1 with the right hand, and then for a 3, just write your favorite sticking for the 3 and glue them together.
Right. Right.
Play it over and over and over. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, or right, left, left, or right, left, left. Okay? Right. If you play that for 10 minutes, your brain is going to be able to hear a bump, bump, da, 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 da. It just goes into your vocabulary.
The thing is to practice.
Now, and if they have a sticking, they can just glue any 2, 2, 2, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3 together, and they will always be correct as far as the groove goes of the odd time.
Right.
Because it's the same as, I look at it the same as funk. It needs to feel good. If a funk tune has, if that's, you need to play that somewhere. Usually the bass drum on the 1, could be the others on snare, could be all bass drum. But that's going to line up with the accents of the whole tune, especially the bass. So odd times, if it's dun dun duck dun dun duck dun dun, you need to play that. It creates the rhythm. So if you come up with these easy stickings, then they can move it around the kit. In a 3, you could play it hi-hat and snare, but maybe as a fill, tom-tom and snare. But da 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 da. They have the same sticking, so they can flow. You can stay true to the subdivisions. Then, after that, you can start to take notes away, which is then you can get into syncopation and messing with it. You don't have to play every note, especially if it's kind of fast. Then I explain, if it's quite fast, how you can take 2 bars of any time signature and go into halftime of 1 bar. So if you have 5/8 plus 5/8, you have 10 notes, 10 eighth notes. So that could be counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now you're in halftime. But I tell the student they have to keep the bass drum on the original rhythm.
Okay.
But if you're thinking in halftime, that opens up a whole world of rhythmic things you can play that you already know. If you're thinking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In the faster counts, people tend to play very blocky, very compartmentalized, quite busy. But if you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1 and 2, 5, 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5, 1 and 2, 3, 4, 5, 2, 4, 5, 1. it opens up the music a lot more. And that's what I used to do with Zappa often, because he'd have long guitar solos in whatever time signature, 11 or 19 or something. And it was, if we're doing that for 5, 6, 7 minutes, it's too much activity for my tastes. And I found if I went to a slower pulse, but staying with the band would typically have being locked into the 2s and 3 patterns.
Right.
Once I went to the halftime, I could really open up the music a lot and play things. And then sometimes I would do that again and do halftime of the halftime. So in other words, if you had 4 bars of 5/8, I could then, I could go from, so if you're in 5/8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1 and 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 4, 3, 4, 5, then 5, 2 would be 1 E and a 2 E and a 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4. So now I'm 1, 2, 3, and 4, dun 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 da 2 and 3, 4 E and a 5 and a 1. But the band duck it.
Nice.
So now it's very, very open. It causes all sorts of tension, because space can cause tension. Disruptive rhythms can cause tension if you play triplets when it's an 8th note groove. Sure. That rubs. So you can then you can use your devices of tension and release. The release is going back with them. But if you're improvising for 6, 7 minutes, and Frank, I realized that Frank liked, there was a similar thing when Frank would play guitar solo. It was tended to be on one chord or one mode, like might be just Lydian for the whole solo. And he would assign certain notes to the keyboard players to play, but he wanted the drums to be very interactive with what he was doing. Like hearing, this is a high level example, but not unlike hearing like Ravi Shankar and Zakir, the way they would improvise together,
Yes.
It was very adventurous, but there's a drone,
yeah.
there's a raga, right? There's the scale of very strict, but the adventures they could go off because they had that kind of basis. So it was similar to that. It wasn't like jazz playing, where there was a bunch of chord changes going by. He didn't do that.
Interesting. Yeah.
It was very much off of one mode, like the Indian stuff, or a couple modes. But the drumming, could be really adventurous, but he wanted it to be interactive, conversational type of soloing, guitar and drums. But not with the other players. The other players were very much in a strict mode playing, it's like an slow arpeggio or something.
Yeah, interesting.
So it was interesting, but it reminded me of some of the East Indian stuff.
Yeah, which creates that tension, which then when it resolves, it's obvious at the resolution.
Yeah, it can be a big deal.
Yeah, interesting.
But it was very open, so it was, you'd have the classical, the 20th century classical music side, which was very strict, very precise, but then it would open up to guitar solo, but it kind of needed to.
Right.
Because I don't think you could play a whole 2.5 hour concert of that dense music alone.
Right.
It needed to breathe, I think that's something I try to do in my compositions as well. I learned from Allan Holdsworth, because he rarely wrote in tempo. He usually wrote in rubato. And then the reason his music was in odd time signatures was because he would bring this rubato piece, and then we would decide not on a feel but a tempo. And he'd worked out different bass notes with a bass player at that time, and then we'd just come up with a tempo, and he would start only counting at the last note of a phrase. Okay. And that last might say then that would be a 1. And they would decide how long that breath should be of that note before the next phrase. And so we'd experiment with it. It might be 5 slow counts, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Next phrase, boom. Or it might be, and I think, that's way too long. Let's try 3 fast ones. So 1, 2, 3, 1. Then we're at the next bit. So that's why his music has so many odd time signatures in it, is how it
Interesting.
naturally, organically feels like it should start, not boxed into 4/4.
Yeah, sure. Makes sense. Yeah. I mean, it gives the, I mean, the melody freedom. Where it lands is where it lands, right?
Well, in Zappa, years ago, I was sitting next to Zappa on some flight, and I was asking about the audition. I said how crazy it was, because you really want somebody who's from the symphony, but you want somebody who's heard doo-wop music, and you want somebody who knows all the New Orleans stuff. And I said, then plus all the odd time stuff. And he said, well, it's really unnatural to play in 4/4. I was like, what? What do you mean by that? And he said, well, you don't speak in 4/4, do you? And I thought, oh, okay, that's the same thing that Allan's doing.
Yeah, yeah.
Is speaking in these flowing phrases, but giving it a tempo.
Right, right.
Because
No,
a lot
no,
of classical
that's,
stuff is rubato. It's free. It speeds up, slows down. But it's
Very
a neat way
interesting.
to write music and think of it.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, now that I think of it, it really frees you up if you don't get boxed in right away, where you're talking about a phrase, and obviously you have some kind of form and structure just by an idea.
And the melodies are strict. Where the bass falls and the melodies, that's all strict. But when he's composing it, he decides how much breath something needs. And a phrase might be a short phrase. Might have these short phrases connected with a long one. But yeah, that's why it's in odd times.
Interesting.
He never started with like a 2-2-3 pattern over and over. Never.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's very interesting. It really opens up the possibilities for those of us who have done it for a long time, and now if you think of it in those terms, then you're cutting yourself loose and free of that thing, right? Because now it's really a conversation, melody, right? Interesting, interesting. Just like
I was lucky to work with these composers. They were brilliant, both brilliant composers. They approach things differently, but there was some similarity too.
Interesting, yeah, and I mean, I'm really happy that we can share that. We can go on for days about this stuff. It's so interesting, and you've been doing a lot of interesting music, a lot of following your path and what you're doing is and
well, thank you.
You're
I've been
sometimes
lucky, yeah.
Sometimes you feel you're only beginning now, right?
Well, it feels like I'm only beginning. Well, the business side of it keeps on changing so much. Yeah, my daughter's a singer-songwriter. It's just strange. Like, you can't sell CDs, you can't sell music. Music's free, and so you have to start there.
Yeah, whole different paradigm.
So shows, okay. It used to be you would put out a CD, and then you would tour, so people would get excited about the music and buy the CD.
Right.
But now there's nothing to sell except the
merch
shirts or something.
Yeah, right.
But it's really backward. It's a crazy time.
Yeah, I wonder if that. I think at some point that we may end up in another place. This might be a transition. It's interesting to watch. Interesting to watch.
It feels like it's a transitional stage. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, I really want to thank you for joining me on this, and we'll have to in future do another one, and maybe specifically go into some of these things. You just gave me an idea of an approach to not just odd times, but approach to certain concepts. I think it's interesting, and those of us who are involved, it keeps us thinking, it keeps us young, and keeps us curious. Right.
Yeah, well, it keeps them moving. I think you should, that's the thing I like. That's the thing I think I got from working with these great composers. It was always a living, moving thing. They were always, it just kept on going.
Yeah. Beautiful. And so we'll have to do an episode 2, a follow-up to this in that one.
Great.
With pleasure. Yeah. And
Thanks,
again.
Allan.
Thanks so much, and like I always say, to be continued.